Document Note 2024-0704 on the case of Charlie HOUODUT versus the USA. Author Charlie HOUODUT. Created 2024-0704 T000-12.9 north, 77.5 east. Updated 2024-09-30. Dear world, the USA has done evil to me. Vengeance be my God. I'm Charlie HOUODUT, and I write here to introduce the opening statement as a foreign plaintiff in my case against the United States of America as it may pertain to the rest of mankind. For dead men tell no tales, and if I were to die before communicating these matters I know to be true, barring none of my faults withal, should you rather mistakenly construe the travails of this tortured existence bears only specificity to my own experience and not to the general endangerment of human society as a whole, of the technological gap it brandishes between ourselves and what my persecutors possess to presently weaponize it, and who thus openly mock me and my peoples, of my partial knowledge of it, of the means to be able to prove it, and perhaps attempt to reverse engineer it. Not that I may wish to be rescued, as much as I may be able to do my utmost to fully inform you thus, so that you, as my fellow compatriots of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and our friends in America, sympathetic to the cause of rights of man, all of who I care foremost for in all humanity, so that you may be able to heed its warnings, galvanize our alliances and our defenses in response. But if not, I would have said my piece and be gone. What I reveal here will be cremated with my bones, and from our complacency, then greater threats would loom upon the simple good and prosperity of our nations and our peoples. And the evil as these foes of mankind would manifest in worse ways and live on forever. I say so here, even in the utter bleakness and hopelessness at the shape of things to come, hearkening within the folk song anthem of my nation's long, rich history of many past millennia, of the vast, glorious geography of her lands, of the origin and confluence of all of Earth's civilizations and cultures in her. And her victories owed, the leader of the minds of the peoples of the world. I can never ever tire of listening and endless repetition, and of the simple truth of the motto from my school days: on straight on, muster on the side of right, march like warriors to the fight, mark thy foe and strike with might. For over 12 years daily, from 2010, 2012 to now, presently, the USA has, through blatant abuse of power, the Office of the President of the United States, HOUODUT, Department of Defense, US DOD, its financial backers amongst the private banking and corporate bondholders in the US Federal Reserve, and its worldwide collaborators, has caused and are causing grievous injury, tortures, captivity, and crimes against humanity upon me through the human trial testing and experimentation of brain-computer interfaces, BCI, neurotechnology devices, neural prosthetics, face cameras, cochlear bioelectronic manacles, GPS and satellite communication chips, etc., together implanted in my brain and body, collectively referred to as mind-eye or HOUODUT cyberbionics, which, causing daily physical injury, maintains a capacity to cause sterility and or mutation of my genetic material from its prolonged usage, are presently dehumanizing my personhood and my psychological well-being, and causing an abridgment to the privacy and ownership of my neurocerebral digital data for the use of these technologies, and so remains thus far inarticulated and uncommunicated the very gravity of matters that I seek here to elaborate and elucidate in this essay for our better understanding. I seek your audience, and perhaps your support as well, for this petition of mine and of my past petitions from 2016 to 2023, that I may hope to present myself as an ambassador of peace to the USA, representing the concerns of the people of my country, Asia, and the global South in these matters, while seeking a hearing at the United Nations Human Rights Commission, UNHRC, International Criminal Court, ICC, and as a non-American foreign plaintiff, I seek justice and reparations from the US Supreme Court, SCOTUS, and for the full rights from the US 7th Amendment of trial by civil jury to pursue simultaneous lawsuits against the commercialization of neurocerebral digital data extracted off of my brain and body from these HOUODUT cyberbionic implants, and from any of its distribution, sales, and franchise to private corporations and public institutions within or outside of America without my consent. That I be allowed to present my testimony in the current soundness of mind and body I possess, delaying which no justice nor cause of human rights can be served, nor any usefulness to mankind can be affirmed from this continued testing of these technologies in this manner. To begin with, let me introduce the nomenclature of referring to myself as the plaintiff, Charlie HOUODUT, for the following reasons. Firstly, HOUODUT, H-O-U-O-D-U-T, is an acronym for Human Object Under Observation Carrying a Device Under Test, wherein these aforementioned neurotechnology or BCI devices form the DUT implanted in my brain and being tested upon me, possibly for purposes of scientific benchmarking and certification before its commercial mass deployment in medical health care, communications, defense, and whatever other purposes. But wherein the signaling from these devices have often enough demonstrated a capacity to directly interfere with the neurobiochemical components in my brain and nervous system and electromechanical components of my body, having caused and capable of causing actual physical injury, while the psychological factors in the testing of these technologies requires to maintain my brain, body, OUO, as a constant observation testbed, which is theorized to change its natural behavior upon discovery of any covert, subliminal, or advertised surveillance in its environment, a prolonged process through which sterility and/or genetic mutation is intended to be introduced in my brain's response for survival under conditions of captivity, and also constitutes a form of behavioral reformation or correction, usually subjected to psychiatric patients, prisoners, and some kind of religious proselytization, albeit under Judeo-Christian Puritanism doctrines of its Western societies, including as it appears for its use in coercive espionage against my own countrymen and in eliciting their mass recruitment into some kind of reality TV, social media, pornographic, voyeurism, video entertainment, outsourced and being run by prominent American franchises, deployed with subtlety and duplicity, amounting to the kind of foreign interference comparable to the Trojan horse or Argo espionage. And because this experimentation is a direct human trial testing and not merely an animal trial testing, a petition therefore calls for its immediate halt and provisioning of just reparations and full remunerations for the plaintiff herein. I should perhaps leave the personal element in this statement till the end, so that I may maintain your attention to the technological and national security issues at stake with these daily neurotechnological experiments I have been witness to. Mainly, the whole gamut of these neurotechnology tests is inherently designed as forms of torture, and in triggering the brain's survival mechanism, causing to drive mutation in the genetic structure of a person by artificially and constantly tethering the brain's response to a controlled external environment. With attempts to layer an artificial consciousness over a person's cerebro-nervous system, including through sleep hypnotics, artificial dream sequencing, and forcing a preternatural circadian rhythm, neural interference with memory formation, emotive response modulation, remote controlled movement of body parts, internal organs, etc., testing and calibrating overall resistance of brain activity towards insanity and suicidal tendencies, a continuous surveillance of thoughts, speech, actions, sights, sound, sleep, nervous system, etc., all of which has been unspeakably dehumanizing, debilitating, and suffocating upon my life and liberty every day for the past 12 years. And separately from its continued illegal access and bootleg publications of all offline and online digital content from all computer electronic devices I possess, and various internet accounts as well, of which I hope to articulate from known experience as summarily as I can in this note, so that it is immaterial who the person may be, that no one, anywhere, under no conditions whatsoever, unless voluntarily and explicitly enrolled, offering their brain and body for progress of science in the testing of these technologies for potential medical, space, and communications development, should have to put up with it as presently being targeted upon me specifically by the USA military authorities, their financial backers, its geopolitical connections, and my political opponents. Does a person subjected to such a condition of existence under daily 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week, relentless torture, one can only try to reconcile that the kind of socially engineered mass hysteria they've managed to foster about the neurotechnology outside of my influence is not unlike the event of human sacrifices or crucifixions that were carried out in ancient primitive societies. Now, one can only bide time by focusing on one task at a time, by temporarily distracting oneself in daily activity, and as it seems, by empathizing the experience of the persecution of other peoples, such as what the Palestinians in Gaza have been enduring every day for over 16 years or more under illegal Israeli siege, blockade, occupation, war crimes, and facing the most diabolical genocide presently. Yet, more importantly, while the self-reference to Charlie is a general American pseudonym for being a foreign national, it is personally a salute to President General Ho Chi Minh and his Viet Cong peasant army that defeated the colonialist and imperialist militaries of Japan, France, and USA from 1945 to 1975, putting an end to a century and decades of foreign occupations in the lands of the unarmed people of Asia, whose millions had died from those foreign wars before they could herald the unification and sovereign independence of their country and the establishment of the Socialist Democratic People's Republic of Vietnam. Elaborating then, to the best of my knowledge, on the matters of the aforementioned implants in my brain, referred to as HOUODUT, cyberbionics, neurotechnology, brain-computer interfaces. Firstly, enumerating below the various types of implants used in my brain and body presently. Spinal tap implants. These invasive neurotechnology chips have been inserted piercing the dural sac of the spinal cord in the position between C4 and C7 cervix, by means of which electrical signaling in the neural pathways of the 12 cranial nerve groups, carrying information processed in the brain over the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, can be tapped and reinserted through these chips. Two, temporal and frontal lobe implants. These semi-invasive neurotechnology chips inserted between the dura and the pia layer in the left temporal lobe of the cerebrum, monitoring brain activity, reading brain waves using miniaturizations of technology that is EEG, ECOG, EMG, PET, fMRI, etc. 3. A point-of-view digital face camera and microphone implants. In addition to capturing digital frames per second, it contains a transducer to convert captured light to photoelectric optic nerve signal patterns, photoreceptive optic nerve signal patterns for the occipital lobe stimulation, transmitted across through the temporal frontal lobe and spinal tap implants. Similar to the technology used in surgical retinal implants to restore blindness presently. GPS and satellite communication chips implanted at the extremities of the body, at the fingertips, wrists, arms, shoulders, transmitting neurocerebral data collected from the above-mentioned implants, and receiving remote command controls from the HOUODUT ground station from US DoD, using combinations of communication protocols as direct satellite transmission reception, assisted cellular communications with base stations, Wi-Fi, etc., while capable of Bluetooth interfacing between electronic devices, etc. Bioelectronic cochlear implant. Activated since 2010, a separate chip implanted inside the jaw near the ears for no known reasons other than serving as manacles or forcing prison routines by injecting pulses to the cochlea in the ear, capable of causing physical imbalance, turns, swivels, falls, nausea, etc., and of artificial sounds capable of causing ultimate deafness, typically deployed in the early morning as vibrating alarm with electronic sounds, unsynchronized amplified body sounds, etc. But most recently, of hovering Israeli drone sounds heard by Palestinians in Gaza have been injected into my HOUODUT cochlear implants, confirming therefore a massive American-Israeli Zionist, Neo-Zionist financing going into the HOUODUT Cyberbionics project and its torture routines as being currently carried out by the US DoD. And so, I emphasize at this point to the courts, as far as the past and present continuation of applications and benefits of HOUODUT Cyberbionics neurotechnology experimentation and data collection over my brain and body are concerned, I wish to enforce my decision and rights to divest its access and investments, financially and otherwise, from any and all Zionist, Neo-Zionist institutions and corporations and any others listed in the boycott, divest and sanction movement initiated by the State of Palestine against Israel and all nations complicit in the ongoing genocide, apartheid, settler colonialism against the Palestinian people. Secondly, while I was inducted into this project in 2010, my own experience informs me that the many features implemented through the neurotechnology implants were only activated over the following 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10-year stages of this HOUODUT project, without needing my physical presence in the labs from the beginning. One of the reasons for the staggered activation of the full feature set of these implants is the inherent time required by bioneuroelectronic chips, that is the spinal tap and the implant, to learn, copy, echo, override the signaling patterns over the neuroelectrical pathways traversing the spinal cord and in the temporal prefrontal lobe implant learning context determination of electromagnetic activity of alpha, beta, gamma, theta, delta waves, brain waves, or differential voltage potentials created during neuron communications over the cerebral hemisphere of the brain. These nerve signals and brain patterns are captured and quantized to neurocerebral digital data at regular intervals within the spinal tap and temporal prefrontal lobe implants that are then buffered and transmitted over satellite communication chips implanted in the extremities of the body. Along with this neurocerebral digital data, a set of video frames per second are also captured from the point of view digital camera implants and transmitted, and likewise spoken and ambient sound samples are also captured with implanted microphones and transmitted, providing therefore an overall audio-visual context confirmation to compare and correlate this neurocerebral information streams from the spinal cord and the brain. Working on this extensive dedicated database collected over 12 years of correlated neurocerebral digital data and audio-video data collected from the spinal tap and temporal prefrontal lobe and other implants in my brain and body, the US DoD computer artificial intelligence algorithms had been able to decipher these various correlations in neurocerebral data to accurately categorize them into human-readable digital information such as text, sounds, images, videos, configurable biomedical parameters, some of which I understand are explained here and below. Firstly, activated since 2014, a recording of neuron population activity of brainwave patterns resulting from the language processing in the temporal and prefrontal lobe and corresponding neural signals operating the larynx and mouth organs over one of the cranial nerves, leading to the formation of spoken words. Ultimately, identifying and categorizing this brain activity in process and neural signal patterns as a sort of a pictorial dictionary of activated brain regions, from which a ticker tape, word-by-word, linguistic, telepathic communications can be seen generated in the external world, at least in one direction at the moment. 2. Activated since 2018, recording neuron population activity or brainwave patterns from the motor cortex in the precentral lobes and neural signals over facial and cranial nerve groups in the peripheral nervous system for voluntary movement of muscles in arms, hands, fingers, legs, head, mouth, lips, tongue, eyelids, etc. so far, and the involuntary contractions, expansions, opening, closing of internal organs from breathing, heartbeat, digestion, etc. Furthermore, HOUODUT satellite control has been able to transmit the exact pattern of reverse neurosignaling pulses to be re-injected through the spinal tap implant of these targeted nerve groups in the peripheral nervous system to cause to bypass, prolong, or compete the brain's involuntary control over those neural pathways. It has been used as a form of torture from the time of activation of this feature, where the US DoD has carried out daily documented force movements of arms, hands, fingers, head, legs, sporadic reversing of breathing, rhythm, as a means of causing suffocation, etc. in me, is mentioned since 2018. 3. Also activated since 2018, recording neuron populations, activity of brainwave patterns in the temporal prefrontal lobes resulting from emotional processing, example sadness and joy, and the corresponding neural signals over the facial and other cranial nerve groups causing or capable of causing tears in the eye, sobbing, laughter, etc. Furthermore, HOUODUT satellite control has been used to monitor and transmit the exact pattern of reverse neurosignaling pulses to be re-injected from the spinal tap over these same nerve groups, therefore capable of overriding involuntary mechanism of those facial and bodily muscle movements activated as emotional responses to crying or laughing after the trigger event in the brain regions, etc. So from the time of activation of this feature, the US DoD has continuously monitored through the temporal prefrontal lobe implant every visual, sound, literary, memory recollection in the brain that triggers, activates those brain regions, generating nerve signals over the facial and other cranial nerve groups, upon which the spinal tap implant tries to artificially emphasize and intensifying and prolonging laughter or crying, etc. Then, activated since 2016, in recording neuron populations activity or brainwave patterns resulting from the image formation in the occipital lobe visual cortex of the brain, as generated from eyesight traversing the optic fiber and brain stem, spinal cord connection, as well as from images formed by thinking, recollection, dreaming, etc. Furthermore, by means of HOUODUT satellite control, digital video converted to exact pattern of reverse optic fiber neurosignaling pulses have been re-injected, appearing as image sequences, as when visualized with 3D augmented reality, visual reality headsets, and has been typically deployed during sleep at the time when the subconscious brain activity causes image formations in the occipital lobe with natural dreams and relays it back over the retina, causing REM, rapid eye movement. And with the HOUODUT injected 3D video sequences, producing an artificial combinatorial response, like the alternation of the images of a bird and a cage on two sides of a cardboard, twirled at speed, causing the appearance of a caged bird. It is unclear how this feature has been fully achieved, and our conjectures are as follows. 1. The spinal tap implant has been used to stimulate the optic fiber connection as part of its reach over to the facial cranial nerve groups, and also be able to recapture the REM signal in the same way. I repeat, 1. The spinal tap implant has been able to stimulate the optic fiber connection as part of its reach over to the facial cranial nerve groups, and also be able to recapture the REM signal in the same way. Second conjecture is that when the eyes are closed, it's possible the temporal prefrontal lobe implant has been made capable of stimulating optic fiber signaling directly, as has been observed with retinal surgeries, eye surgeries. The third conjecture is that raw 3D video images have been projected through a contact lens implant, but this would, however, imply a capacity to entirely block out natural sight or impart a condition of blindness artificially by US DoD HOUODUT ground station signaling, and so has been ruled out only as an extreme possibility. Therefore, as a primary form of torture, physical, mental, and psychological, from the time of activation of this feature, the US DoD, the Department of Defense of the United States of America, has injected over 10,000 3D, augmented reality, visual reality sequences into my brain during sleep, almost 4 sequences daily and nightly, wherein the content of these sequences are especially characterized by viscerality, gore, violence, pornography, Judeo-Christian, Caucasian, religio-cultural stereotypes, parodies, etc., comparable to torture routines depicted in the movie Clockwork Orange. In addition to causing debilitating headaches from the overstimulation of the eyeballs and the REM and the blockage of the maxillary sinuses and the visuospatial disorientation in the occipital lobe. Furthermore, activated since 2022, neuron population activity has been recorded or brainwave patterns resulting from visual memory retention in the temporal lobe and long-term memory sites in its hippocampus connection. But it remains unclear how these are triggered or collected by the HOUODUT neurotechnology implant, the spinal tap or the temporal prefrontal lobe implant, without first being retrieved into the visual cortex of the occipital lobe as images or converted into neural signals read by the spinal tap implant, unless it is directly accessed through the brainstem connection to the fornix nerve fiber tracts of the hippocampus. Presently, computer-aided tomography and magnetic resonance imaging scans of my brain and spinal cord have indicated the formation of a thumbnail-sized calcified speck beneath the dura mater on the left temporal lobe, and this symptom seems to be consistent with the current trends in research and development observed with implanting semi-invasive brain-computer interface chips in the temporal lobe, which can be carried out without actual neurosurgery and functions mostly like advanced EEG or ECOG or EMG sensors, MEG sensors, underneath the skull and the dura layer. The spinal tap implant, however, has been detected by these scans as seen as a narrowing of the foraminal sac in the spinal cord at positions between C4 to C7 cervix in the back of the neck region. While none of my previous petitions to the American Supreme Court in 2016 and 2022 had explicitly identified these technologies used in HOUODUT cyberbionics implanted in my brain and body, it appears that it has only been the last 10 years, since 2014, that neurotechnology, a brain-computer interface, sensors and chips implanted through invasive neurosurgical procedures and semi-invasive procedures accessing dura and pia mater layers beneath the skull have been commercially licensed in America by the United States Food and Drug Administration, US FDA, for use in human implants for treatment of ALS, paralysis, blindness, and other nervous system and motor cortex disorders. Though externally wearable or non-invasive BCI based on EEGs can to some degrees implement functions of semi-invasive implants needed for robotics, video gaming, and computer console manufacturers, etc. However, the intentional physical and mental torture through the HOUODUT cyberbionic implants in my brain and body over the last 12 years as being carried out by the US Department of Defense targets me as a non-American foreign national and appears to be a form of weaponization and police militarization than whatever benevolent purposes these other recent commercial developments might be aimed at. Furthermore, because commercial technologies in America presently do not appear to have advertised the range of functionality I have described over the temporal and occipital lobe brain activity and the neural pathways control in the spinal cord as possible through the HOUODUT neurotechnology implants used by US Department of Defense, it may well be that these state-of-the-art devices may have been imported from another country where its research and development in neurobioelectronics and communication technology may have reached a more advanced stage presently, and leads us to believe it may have been invented and built by Japan originally, but imported and programmed by US DoD as per the needs of its corporate financiers. On the other hand, while wearable BCI devices, brain-computer interface devices, have already commercially proliferated in China, in those years, more recently, its own researchers have also advertised an invasive neurotechnology chip with over 30,000 bidirectional channels, which appears by far the most sophisticated in its category anywhere in the world presently, as per the latest news. Whilst I have repeatedly requested with my petitions, essays, and poems even, and with monologues over the surveillance channels, asking for assistance for the removal of these HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotech implants from my brain and body, for medical aid against physical pain caused, for bringing an end to this HOUODUT satellite signaling, and this continued daily torture, sleep hypnotics, human trial testing, dream sequencing, artificial dream sequencing, mass sacrifice, and pointing to the willful violation of the basic human rights and constitutional rights of a person forced into captivity as a HOUODUT subject this way, and warning against the inert complacency to its military technological ramifications around the world. And so, in lieu of such delays in effecting an official termination of this project, and in the denial of such occasions for court hearings requested by me, it would likely give credence to the conjectures of endangerment to human rights and human existence in general, among which I mention here forthwith, because of the nature of its seriousness and preparations needed to counter its threats, these 3 or 4 chief potential outcomes from the use of these HOUODUT cyberbionics or brain-computer interfaces, neurotechnology, bioelectronics. Presently, already, over the last 8 years or so, investments for the futures of the HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology implants, predicated partially on the results of the daily experimentation over my brain activity, are being distributed through other franchised offerings such as Bitcoin commerces, online gambling, third-party advertisements, etc., but more deviantly as franchises directly bought out by Meta, Apple, Microsoft, Google, other big tech, etc., for their massively multiplayer video gaming and augmented reality, visual reality, social media platforms, emerging platforms, and for private technical research institutions and universities such as Stanford, etc. to aid them to build compatible 3D digital environments with humanoid characters and landscapes and software code for their products interfacing with HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology, but by legally profiting from an unapproved access to neurocerebral data, personal data, and code parameters from my brain activity under daily sleep hypnotics, artificial dreaming sessions, point of view face camera live feed, and social media accounts on the internet, etc. Thereafter, firstly, we regard the likely planned mass proliferation of HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology implants used as civilian surveillance to be imposed upon foreigners and immigrants in America, typically foreign students and foreign workers, as inferenced from my American experience, and possibly other documented and undocumented foreign immigrants as well. And this egregious overreach seems possible, buttressed by the judicial limit of the 11th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, in which accordingly, while the U.S. Bill of Rights provides the semblance of equality before the law amongst American citizens and non-citizens alike, and while American citizens can seek constitutional remedies against any violation of these rights by the government of the United States and its public offices, the enforcement of these rights for non-citizens are not justiciable in American courts. Therefore, the life and liberty of foreign nationals or non-citizens in America seems at the mercy to be openly violated with impunity, potentially to protect whatever crimes against them by the US federal and state governments and their subsidiary departments. It is for this same reason that when Dred Scott and his family became free men and fleeing to the northern states, and some southern state in America then asserted its right of slave ownership upon them. And the great emancipator, Honest Abe Lincoln, had argued then as an attorney of law that even though neither slaves nor free men enjoyed the rights of citizenship in America in the 1850s, and as such the courts were not obligated to interfere in this dispute on account of the 11th Amendment of the Constitution, he yet persuaded the courts to give Dred Scott and his family a just hearing, if not the government of America possessing the means to dispense due justice accordingly. Secondly, in the deployment of HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology implants as permanent physical, mental, psychological manacles or straitjackets, and within penitentiary corrective systems upon prisoner populations in America, endangering typically African Americans, Latino Americans, and other racial minorities, presumably as permitted by the loophole in the 13th Amendment of the US Constitution provisioning the power to impose slavery or forced servitude as a form of punishment in their cases. This conjecture is further evidence from the study of the graph of incarceration rate and numbers in America, which incidentally is similar to the rates and numbers recorded in British colonial India from 1920s to 1940s, as maintained presently by Prison Studies Org Research in America, which shows how the rate of incarceration increased, that is, the number of persons per 100,000 population, doubling every decade since 1980 till quadrupled in 2008, at which point it recorded the highest number of persons in prison in America ever, and that thereafter gradually decelerated till 2016 with release of some 100,000 to 150,000 prisoners in those 8 years, though still remaining above the number and rates from the year 2000. But it is, however, between the years 2016 to 2020 that what is observed is the most dramatic, steepest reduction in the rates and numbers of incarceration in the United States, with the release of apparently nearly 500,000 prisoners in those 4 years, dropping down 3 times faster to levels after 1990, nearly 3.5 decades ago. This gives us grounds to suspect that it is not really any evidence of some kind of progressive humanitarianism in America in the 21st century, but of the likelihood of early mass deployment of HOUODUT neurotechnology manacle implants already implanted into some of its prisoner populations, and who thereby might have secured an expedited release. Thirdly, from the distribution of HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnologies amongst the known allies of USA, that is, the United Kingdom, the EU, Australia, Japan, and Israel, for its potential use to counter their own falling birth rates in their populations as defense against all non-Caucasian races and non-Judeo-Christian peoples amongst its immigrants, foreign nationals, diplomats, travelers, prisoners of war, colonial subjects, etc. Instead of enabling more merging between races as the most natural means of preservation and proliferation, that Asian countries have known, therefore fallaciously, as through the best laid plans of mice and men, these countries with advanced technologies have been aiming to assert an external overall Malthusian control over natural resources of Earth against the legitimate interests of the dominant majority of the 8 billion population in the world, and so, mainly at the microscopic level, they might be pushing for the deployment of these neurotechnology implants to enable some new type of human slavery, forced labor, servitude, captivity of peoples representing these majority races. I am therefore goaded to defy and disobey without deference every subverted normalcy personally and politically as imposed by any such behavioral conditioning under the influence of these neurotechnology implants, without my consent and the illegal surveillance and espionage carried out through it. And so, whilst alive, I seek alliance and cooperation with whichever nations competitive to the United States of America and who are known to have developed sufficiently advanced technologies on their own to be able to potentially reverse engineer, deconstruct, and build defenses against whatever these HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology devices are capable of. At the macroeconomic level, it really boils down to the West resorting to new means of deploying war as a state of health of economy, and their so-called national economic security interests in rising costs of living in their own countries, seemingly threatened as per the wealth of nations theory, from the general trajectories of growth inclined and peaceably inclined policies of Eastern economies, which are aimed at improving per capita incomes of their peoples at scale. And therefore the West, in response, stands ready to inflict the most dangerous deprivations, destructions, and disruptions through military means upon the hard-won ascent to peace, prosperity, and sovereignty of the peoples of the republics, governments, and economies of BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and global South nations in the 21st century. Ultimately, we observe that these new means of conventional wars upon the peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America into the 21st century are reaching unlimited scales of destruction using automated machines, biological warfare, pandemics, weaponization, adulteration of mass consumer goods, etc., and other kinds of Western complicity in militarily, financially, and commercially enabling and profiting from crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes of genocide, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, slavery, settler occupation, colonialism, warmongering, etc., including subverting the war on terrorism into deploying terrorists and terrorism as the means of war in other countries. Example, such as plausibly with the most recent drone radio signal triggered mass detonations of IEDs embedded in newly issued consumer electronic gadgets of Lebanese civilians by Israel, allegedly, in the Crocus Hall massacre of Russian civilians in 2024, in India too, in Jammu Kashmir, and recent domestic train derailments and other infrastructure sabotages, and apparently, evidently clear in extending the last 2 failed decades of $6.5 trillion American wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, into currently using Israel as a sledgehammer with the excuse of its 2023 October 7th terrorist attack, allowing it to carry out in disproportionate response an ethnic cleansing, depopulation, genocide of other Semitic races, including military war crimes and state-sponsored terrorism by Israel in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, currently as a way of continuation of USA's previous wars aimed overall to disrupt West Asia trade and cultural relations with the world. From 20 years ago to ongoing, as we had previously written in our 2022 anti-war essays, bearing comparison to the 2 decades that stretched between World War I and World War II. So, in the same way that American people take for granted in their lands, the USA must sooner or later realize that all peoples of Asia too have the right to exist with freedom from wars. And we who have overcome historical colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid are not likely to tolerate foreign military aggression in our lands. And until such time, we are committed to maintaining a determined attrition and antagonism against all militaries of USA, UK, EU, NATO, and Israel, who continue to behave as enemies of peace on earth, evident from their wars having inflicted the highest number of civilian deaths and casualties in the world in the post-World War II era, with over 50 million dead by the end of the Cold War, and then some tens of millions more into the 21st century and the post-9/11 decades. And for those of you who think I should have been dead already from carrying on with this HOUODUT neurotechnology implants, and because I'm not, It seems as though I have also been deprived of my right to armed resistance against this foreign occupation of my brain and body. And contrary to what my persecutors in USDOD and its affiliates would have wanted geopolitically from targeting me over the last 16 years, I have been rendered unable to even sign up with some formidable terrorist group, God forbid, out there, even if I wanted to. Seeing as it is impossible for me to do so, implanted as I am with such a universal surveillance beacon as the HOUODUT cyberbionics. And so, if I should only be able to curse at you, you scavengers, awaiting my last days, then fie upon thee, fie upon the United States of America and its Constitution, and let danger light upon its charter, for taking away my inalienable rights and liberties as an immigrant and a human being. And so also may all persecuting, colonizing, genocidal races wherever in the world wither away and perish. And may the natives of its land once again thrive and govern peacefully and freely over their own peoples, perennial with the earth. And as Prometheus might have bemoaned at his torturers and persecutors, you die first! And as a returning Jesus might say, forgive them not, Lord, for they do know exactly, very well what they're doing is wrong, and yet they continue to do so. And so lastly, unleash thine avenging demons upon these foes of mankind and enemies of earth, and grant me vengeance in this world or the next. Yet, in giving the benefit of doubt to whoever my foes may be as regards to how these matters stand at the moment with these petitions unanswered by the U.S. Supreme Court and Government of the United States, the International Human Rights Commission, the United Nations, and in not wishing to destroy that part of my own nature imbued with the milk of human kindness, I suppose in this petition of mine for truth and justice to be delivered by granting me with my full and inalienable human rights and constitutional rights, as demanded even presently as a subject in the testing of these HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology implants as advertised. I appeal to the world body of the United Nations to unequivocally acknowledge me as a person and a person of worldwide public importance, through which I may be obligated to bear the weight of this new communication technology as a responsibility of some United Nations public office, without which, under these circumstances, I'm inclined to suspect the whole world is a trap designed to push man into failing, and by which even the best of my good intentions, made openly vulnerable to theatrics and machinations of others, and in dealing with the overall workplace disability under such conditions, will no doubt end in disastrous results, leaving me no better than to keep to myself, to avoid society, to pass time in the solipsism of mind of which I am perfectly capable of, from the serendipity of having found in me some kind of blessed genius, perhaps working out languages, linguistics, and literatures, and cultivating a soul satisfied with its apportioned lot, while shaping the resources available to me, even as quite frugal my daily existence has become. However, having been trained as a computer electronics engineer, I cannot deny the depth of disappointment in me to be compelled to relinquish an opportunity to understand and work for the further development of this technology, neurotechnology with its makers, because I regard it as a foremost principle of mine to non-cooperate with nations amongst whom have shown the inclination to use these technologies for the wrong objectives, for persecutions against others, especially being currently complicit or causing unimaginable levels of destructions, deprivations, wars, war crimes, genocides, ethnic cleansing, depopulation, inflicting atrocities of famines, diseases, tortures, displacements, etc., upon the most defenseless, weak, poor, downtrodden, unclothed, unfed, unhealed peoples who are left to enduring pain and suffering beyond any means of human tolerance, even as they are only children, women, mothers to be, the elderly, the disabled, bereft, orphaned, endangered, and made victims of foreign wars, and bearing no fault of theirs, being merely ordinary working class civilians, cherishing the simplest of dreams, owning a house, a business, going to school, being educated, having friends, raising a family, giving back to their societies, and instead being made to bear daily witness now to watch their cities destroyed by bombs, automated machines, military invasions, and on, being made part of war theaters and weapons testing by these so-called advanced nations. And such has become the nature of the irreversible damage to life and property in Gaza, Palestine. Daily, over the course of the last 1 year in the disproportionate military campaign by Israel upon the Palestinian peoples, and its continued illegal occupation and expansion into Palestinian territories, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, from 1967, and in continuing to deny the inalienable rights and liberties of the Palestinians and the sovereign independence of their state of Palestine, which remains unfulfilled in over a century, and as yet remains the last proof of victory in the progress of this world we know, from its past socio-political evils of colonialism, apartheid, slavery, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and irrefutably, as it seems now, genocide. A citizen Zero of India has exhaustively articulated in his essays, op-ed, social media posts for over a year and a half, encoding the subject of Palestinian cause to our understanding and to my understanding as Charlie HOUODUT. I do not wish to rake up the daily mounting casualty statistics in Gaza or West Bank in Palestine on the seemingly interminable war launched by Israel. But I wish to bring to your attention, to the member states of the United Nations, that I think there is no worthier terrestrial cause presently for a person such as I, endowed with HOUODUT cyberbionics, neurotechnology communication privileges, where, if the Palestinian people may so grant it, under the aegis of the United Nations, I wish to provide every assistance possible in volunteering and delivering medical and humanitarian aid, education, reconstructions, etc., and especially in openly documenting live video feed from my implants, the state of war damages and investigations needed in Gaza, in the service of various UN departments, International Court of Justice, and for the posterity of mankind. Otherwise, I cannot argue further as to what good, if any, this technology was meant to serve in this world. Either truth hurts, or I'm sorry to have hurt your feelings. But please, USA, Gaza, ceasefire now. USA, no more wars. USA, peace dividend now. USA, free Charlie HOUODUT. I think the song has lasted almost long enough. The subject's interesting, but the rhymes are getting mighty rough. I wish the war was over, free from rags and fleas. So we'd kiss the wives and sweethearts, eating goober peas. Peas, 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 please, peas, please, peas, peas, eating goober peas. We'd kiss the wives and sweethearts, eating goober peas. Charlie HOUODUT versus the USA in the case of human testing of neurotechnology implants. Postscript. Appended on 11th October 2024. As to how I became a subject of the HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology human trial experiments, I conjecture in hindsight it was in 2010, the year when I had been to a dentist in San Francisco for the removal of my wisdom teeth. Ironically, that, as it happens, was the only time in my life I was placed under medical anesthesia and had lost consciousness, not counting my regular weekend binge drinking with friends at parties and on-scene blackouts is the same thing. It was during this time, I think, that the HOUODUT cyberbionics neurotechnology bioelectronic chips were implanted in my brain and body. Further on, in the years 2012, 2014, military-grade neurochemicals were delivered into my brain to facilitate neural connectivity and signaling for the operation through prescription medications. I've been living in India for 10 years since 2014. I'm unable to convince any of the local doctors, neurosurgeons, and scientists to take account of these neurotechnological matters and investigate. They would not even recommend a token laser eye surgery, which I've insisted on getting done as a precautionary step. The year 2015 itself was denied the procedure by these consulting doctors at the time. Meanwhile, the live video feed from the HOUODUT cyberbionics point of view face cameras is being distributed to audiences in the USA firstly and worldwide pay-per-view subscribers later on, and it has been franchised out to some American internet video gaming television corporations for stage management of some kind of voyeuristic reality TV show, something like the movie Truman Show, and that I was supposed to be the secret star and cameraman of this show that I've been running in America for about 2 years, since 2012, while many of the audiences were also recruited as extras and given costumes as doppelgangers in 3D, VR, AR, artificial dream sequences injected into the HOUODUT subject's sleeping subconscious so as to evoke a correlated response in wakeful consciousness, perhaps as a means to create, impress, and reinforce a false memory. Further on, from 2014 to 2015, the American government and its corporate franchises started to advertise and outsource their operations with Indian internet users in public. In this reality TV show maintaining the live video transmissions from a HOUODUT NEUROTECHNOLOGY point of view camera implants. And this had started to feed the voodoo frenzy and social media addiction of the Indian people about my divinity by some kind of a three-eyed deus ex machina. Many of the Indian people knowingly or otherwise about taking as extras in this social media reality TV show, enticed by very little monies or cheap thrills, specifically in situations with flash mobs, igniting political subversions monitored by sadistic American operatives, and thus exposing the gullibility and vulnerability of the Indian public to easy corruption, foreign colonization, the American Trojan horse, Argo espionage, and trying to provide a comparative reference to the technological gap these developments throw up for the Republic of India in the 21st century. Consider these pop culture analogies from the Star Wars movies. If Charlie HOUODUT is the Jedi stranded on planet Tatooine, most of the people are generally then like the good-hearted but naively backward Ewoks. Going about their obsessions for religiosity, entertainment, consumerism, foreign energy, import dependency, etc., lacking advanced educational, technical, and manufacturing abilities, let alone be able to decrypt advanced neuroelectronics. While the current Indian government had become like the spineless trade federation, sickly religious priorities and subordination to the interests of the dark forces of American geopolitics endangering the Republic. And as Java scavengers, they were more likely to pawn off my remains and robotic parts to the highest bidders in the world and be able to stand on their own constitutionally, technologically, militarily, and forge a rebel alliance, peaceful world order of post-colonial nations, of BRICS and the global south, against the advances of the sinister empire of USA, its allies and dependents, the armies of clones, droids, and stormtroopers, etc. Finally, in confirming that I, Charlie HOUODUT, the plaintiff at the U.S. Supreme Court, I'm officially by birth a citizen of India, and having previously introduced this case to my fellow citizens, government, President, and Supreme Court of India, unless the Republic of India wishes to officially recognize me as a space cadet in partnership with the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, and wishes to provide me with diplomatic credentials by means of which I may seek resolution and closure with the American government for the other outstanding issues raised in this aforementioned statement. Leaves me thus otherwise to understand that the government of India are in concurrence, cohorts, and benefiting from the human trial experimentation of these technologies on me, and ultimately do not possess technological capacity themselves to reverse engineer neurotechnology and other implants I carry, and knowingly permitted the American government to infringe and violate my rights as a citizen of India, and previously as a legally documented foreign student and worker in the USA. And because of these factors, my citizenship to India no longer affords any protections or benefits to me, and on the contrary makes me an active agent of espionage against the Republic of India. And therefore I, for such reasons, being Charlie HOUODUT, plaintiff with neurotechnology implants, renounce my citizenship to India and relegate myself to the status of a stateless person. End of postscript. Author Charlie HOUODUT. Total word count with the updated postscript on October 12 to 11 is at 7,191 words.